Welcome to the Science of Being Well docuseries. There is a science, an art, and an unknown factor in being well. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Goodstone, Healing Through Love mentor. Each of the speakers in this series has devoted their life to educating, training, and treating thousands of clients to create and maintain health and wellness. My goal in creating this series is to encourage and enable you to become your own health advocate. Here is a brief intro to today's amazing speaker. As a marriage and family therapist, certified sexual educator, lecturer, producer, and author, Todd Malloy is bold and an innovative thinker who tackles some of the most complex problems of our times. Founder and director of Inner Peace Counseling Center, co-author of A Time to Rise, Trailblazers Award recipient at Pfeiffer University, producer and host of the groundbreaking, so important Man Cave Conversations, and so much more. And I want to say to you, first of all, it's a delight that you're coming to speak with me today. But I also want to say that your work is so needed in our society, especially now. And there are people that need to hear your message.
Yeah, no, when you have a passion for something and you really believe what you believe, you're just motivated, you're driven. It's always been important to me to be a part of the solution of the ills of society. And this is my offering to the world, to just be a part of the world's solution to healing, wellness, and wholeness on every level.
And it's on every level. It isn't just physical health by
Correct.
any means.
Correct.
So my first question that I'm asking all the speakers is, what is the key to health and healing?
The key to health and healing is believing yourself, believing your own experience, connecting to your own experience in the midst of your interactions, and accepting the truth of the moment based on your experience as opposed to external voices, things of that nature. And when we think about it, we're taught to think outwardly, not necessarily inwardly. We're taught to ignore our own experience and adjust to what's going on around us, as opposed to connecting to our inside, allowing that to be our truth, and shifting the environment such that we're comfortable in our experience. For example, my perspective is everybody is traumatized. Because when you're taught, and it's not because of the isms of society or the heinous things that we talk or that could happen. It's about when we're a kid, we're taught to be seen and not heard. When you get a little older, you're taught to say, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Mm-hmm. When you're a little older, you're taught to be politically correct. When does anybody say, connect to your own experience, value it enough to put a voice to it, and believe that the people around you care enough to make a shift or an adjustment? We're not. What we're taught, whether consciously or subconsciously, we have to go along to get along. And that entails not connecting with your own experience and making the things around you more important than your personal experience.
Well, one of the issues that I'm realizing as you're talking is that there are people around us that make an effort to influence us and may stop us, even if we believe strongly. You go for a medical checkup and you say certain things, and the doctor can be very arrogant and say things to you, and you have to believe their word. But It happens not just with doctors, it happens with everything. It's certainly happening politically.
Yeah, if you think about it, even cell phones, every month or every week there's a new cell phone. And they're telling you through marketing and media that the one you just bought a month ago is inadequate because it doesn't have an additional feature. You're either too tall, too short, too wide, too thin, too dark, too light, to any of those things. Now, we can choose to listen to the noise, or begin to validate our own experience, validate ourselves, validate our truth, and move in our truth, irrespective of the distractions. Because ultimately, I'm a firm believer in no one stops us but us. But if we can stay calm and not allow the anxiety or the hamster wheel that we're too often put on, and actually relax, connect to our own experience, the removal of anxiety will allow solutions to come naturally.
And one of the ways is by connecting with people with similar values who help to support you, because it's so easy to doubt yourself. We have a brain and a mirror brain, and we react to others.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Having accountability partners, there's biblical script that says evil communication corrupts good manners. I mean, by associating to something contrary to you will cause you to shift your beliefs.
That is true.
If you're a positive person hanging out with negative people, you'll ultimately find yourself negative as well.
Definitely. So you talk about being authentically you. What
Yes.
does that mean?
Authentically means you is connecting to your own experience and validating your own truth. For example, I'm working with a young woman today, and she wants to be a dancer. But her grandparents said, "How are you going to make money being a dancer?" So now she's choosing something else in college that's not associated to dancing. However, she's danced since 5 years old. She's 18. She's danced her whole life. That's what she's prepared herself for. But now, because of the stories of others that may not fully understand her vision, they're trying to distract her and redirect her course, as opposed to me saying, "Hey, what is your truth? What is your passion? What is really pulling you?" Because we don't chase money. Money will chase us if we chase our passion. We think about this. A football player, running back on a football team, runs through 4 men weighing over 300 pounds just to make a touchdown, just to gain an inch. You have to love what you do to face obstacles. I love and enjoy what I do so much. I recognize there's 1,200 pounds of men standing in front of me trying to stop me. But I believe in myself, and if I push hard, if I use my cunning, if I learn how to cut angles, if I learn how to do different things, adapt and adjust, I can make a touchdown. And in life, it would benefit us, behoove us to do similarly. We have obstacles. I had a client came in, and he was an entrepreneur, nervous that a 15-year client, a 15-year staff worker was leaving the company. Initially, he got very anxious, but then he settled his spirit down and recognized there's already a solution in place. It's hard to replace someone with 15 years. However, by slowing down, calming his nerve, the solutions of staff that he already had, that he can reshuffle a deck, have some contract sources that he also has access to and availability to, will not create a hiccup. Will be a smooth process with this person leaving. The solutions are inside of us, not from outside.
What you pointed out that stood out for me was to slow down.
Right. It's to slow down. Pace is important and depend on your knowledge base and skill set. And then where you're lacking knowledge and understanding and skill set is to be intentional about going to pursue it, such that now you gain an additional knowledge and understanding, to a point we were talking about earlier about accountability partners and people around you that share similar mindset. It's finding people around you, creating a tribe that will facilitate your growth and that you can use for legitimate sounding boards to facilitate your growth and development.
Otherwise, if we try to do it totally alone, we just get so bombarded by the negativity and the obstacles that it gets too difficult for most people.
Most definitely. We're designed by design, and attachment theory has already taught this. We're relational people by design. And again, all the research is in attachment theory, the 70 years of research. And it's to build on that understanding and that knowing. No one is born on an island. So therefore, but we have to, I always encourage people to stack the deck in your favor. Surround yourself with people of like mind, like trajectory. You don't necessarily have to be doing the same things, but are we moving in a positive direction? Are we talking about personal growth and development? Are we talking about wellness? Are we talking about healing and wholeness? Those are the type of people that you want to connect yourself to if that's the trajectory that you're on. So with that, you feed off each other. There's a reciprocal or reciprocating energy that will circulate between all of you and collectively attain all of what you desire.
It's so true. So how does being authentically you help you to heal and to be well?
Number one is, again, is being one person. You know, too often times we have the employee hat, the entrepreneur hat, the parent hat, the child hat, the husband hat, the wife hat, the this hat, the that hat, and everybody has expectations of you, and you're trying to be all things to all people, as opposed to what is actually congruent with who you are and consistent with who you are. Learning how to say no when your spirit and your mind is telling you no, or for some odd reason you're guilted or shamed into giving another answer. There should be a common thread between all the layers of our lives on who we are and how we reflect ourselves. If I'm a kind, caring, and loving person, that means that through all of the dimensions and layers of my life, there should still be a reflection of the core essence of who I am. The manifestation may be different, but I am consistent and congruent with what is, lack of best word, what gives me rest, gives me the inner peace, i.e. Inner Peace Counseling Center, that really facilitates my inner peace, and let that be my truth, my internal truth that I choose to share externally. Again, being one person. So even though I play many roles and I do things, there's only one message I really have.
That's interesting.
It's really only one message. The one message of personal growth and development, the one message of being whole and living in your truth.
So how, you also talk about being intentional. So
Correct.
how can you be intentional to be authentic and live in your truth?
Right. By connecting to self and understanding your truth, is being intentional about that being consistent through actions and word as you're going through life. If I'm a positive person, and I should monitor that my conversation and my communication. Because when I hear myself being negative, I should actually correct it and make the adjustment. Oh, excuse me, I misstated that. Let me say that over. Let me be consistent with who I am if I consider myself a loving, gentle person, are my actions, are my behaviors loving and gentle? Now, I may not always sound like a preacher. However, even in the midst of difficult conversations, did I do it out of love? Am I being genuine with my experience and my articulation? Because even though I may have a hard conversation with you, it's not to destroy, it's to remove a barrier between us that's hindering our collective growth to being the best people we can be. Because as we're doing that, we're creating an environment that facilitates a life worth celebrating. Because now we're creating an environment where we can thrive.
Yeah, and you're talking about in the moment, noticing what you're doing, because we are human and you're going to react, you're going to get angry. Even Jesus threw a bench. I mean,
exactly. Those things happen. But it's not so much the varying emotions that we experience, it's the why. It's the understanding the why we're doing it. And then collectively adjusting as we're being present. Being present is very important. As you said, I like when you said focusing on the now. It's not the language you use, but my interpretation. Being present. You know, we spoke previously, and I'm very big on being present, honest, sincere in every moment. But in the midst of being present, we're creating a closed loop communication system where I'm connecting to my own experience, I'm fully aware of the environment, and I'll know what the next best move is.
Oh, I just heard something again, that when you said to be present and to be truthful, sometimes the best thing that you can do is not be truthful or not share your truth with someone that you know is thinking in a different way, manipulative, controlling, will throw it back at you. It's like, don't put your pearls before swine. So just
Right, exactly. But remember, even in the midst of that, remember, discord amongst brethren is an abomination. Therefore, we must learn to agree to disagree. If I'm confident in my truth, I don't have to argue with you. You have a right to believe what you believe. I don't have to convince you. I'm convinced, and that's sufficient. And what we do is wherever we disagree, right, we'll pray understanding for both parties, and that we both come into a truth as we ponder and reflect on what was shared.
so you talk about becoming the greatest version of yourself.
Exactly.
And how do you do that?
Again, becoming the greatest version of yourself is believing your own truth, learning to accept you. Think about this. You know, one of the things I always share with anybody that talks to me is I'm trying to kill the representative. You know, that person that shows up, the mask that we wear on a day-to-day basis. Because as we present the representative, the core essence of who we are never gets satisfied. Why? Because the mask, the representative, covers it, shadows it. So even if we have people in our lives, they're not able to fill a void because we're not transparent enough to share it, because society is taught for one reason or another it's inadequate. As opposed to validating your own truth. You know, all of us are unique. So there's not one mindset, one rhythm that we all beat to. So therefore, if I'm on a different frequency, like I'm a confessed nerd, I look like an athlete according to the environment. However, my truth is I'm a nerd that likes to sit back, read, study, research, delve into how the brain works, try to be a solution to all the ills of society. So I rather read and study than watch football on TV, even though I look like a linebacker.
So, but it's nice to look that way, because more men are able to relate to you and listen to you because you look a certain way.
Correct.
You react.
Right. But when they meet me, they'll hear my truth. That allows me to thrive as a person, as you're asking me, because once you talk to me, my best offering is the one that I have. That in itself will resonate and create an energy that draws people to me. But then they come to me, they're coming to me based on a truth, not a facade.
And it helps them to feel safe. That's another part of this, that
exactly.
As we own our own truth, we allow others to feel safe enough to do that for themselves too.
Correct. Excellent. Because once you move in truth, you move in the freedom of being who you are, it frees up others to do the equally.
And another thing that you say is to become comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Oh, most definitely. As we're making these shifts to be authentic and being one person, the people around us, the environment around us will not always be as willing to accept the shifts and the changes, because the boxes that others put us in, the boxes that we've lived in, have benefited them in some way, shape, or fashion. However, now when the equation you used to do to get me to do what you want to do doesn't work anymore, they're disgruntled, and you may lose friends. It may be uncomfortable. What I call it is the pruning period. You know, in order for a tree to bear its greatest fruit, there's a pruning that has to take place to reap the greatest harvest. So as we're looking to make change, and we're changing in our mind, our thoughts, our attitudes, even our language, it's going to create a shift with friends, current relationships, even with employees. You may even find out, like I did, that I no longer wanted to be an engineer. I was really called to be a therapist. And making those shifts create emotional discord amongst some close people. But through that process, you really understand who's with you and who's against you. However, or just not for you, not necessarily against you. But also the beauty of that is once you learn to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, nothing stops you. Nothing hinders you. you're allowing your will to override the emotional impact. So now that's the highest form of maturity, is to be able to separate your thoughts from your emotions, self-actualization.
Wow. So can you offer some practical steps? Like what can people do starting now? And before I ask that, I just wanted to comment, I almost forgot, about couples with coronavirus and people being home together. And if one of them is starting to really own their own truth, what does that do to the relationships? And then we'll get to the steps, because that's an important piece.
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting personally in my own practice with being isolated because of the coronavirus, COVID-19, however you prefer to refer to it. It's now making them reassess their relationship and if it's actually genuine or not. So I have some couples are finding it to be beautiful. Oh my God, I got my best friend back. Because now they're reconnecting on a different level, not moving like hamsters on a hamster wheel because, oh, we got to be here on one time, here on another time. But I'm also having clients recognize that they were so busy and all the distractions that happened in our former normal life were actually intentional to keep them away from each other because they didn't actually like each other.
Yeah. So
this consolidation, this isolation is calling all of us to do some processing, some rethinking, even recalibrating on careers. Because there's some people, you know, what we do, we're considered essential. So we got to work through this process. There's been some great financial impacts on others, and now they're believing, should I put my financial stability in the hands of others or take accountability for my own success and prosperity?
So sometimes the thing that seems most uncomfortable can be a gift.
Right.
For us to really
learn to be comfortable and uncomfortable. Exactly. You'll find that there are more gifts than not. There's no such thing as failure. Things that happen are more challenges than anything else. There are opportunities to use as a stepping stone to move forward.
So how would you relate that to health? Because there are many people who have gotten cancer and ended up saying at some later point that the cancer was a gift.
Well, from this point is, remember, there is a connection between mental wellness and physical disease. Even as you mentioned cancer, there's some research that says unforgiveness and cancer are tied together.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as I'm connecting to my own experience, I'm beginning to be authentic with my experience and speak and share my truth. When I'm learning to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, when I'm learning to accept myself, that frees the mind. So, example, I have clients that I'm working with that have inoperable inoperable aneurysms, that are not able to get kidney and liver transplants, that are within a period of time they could transition or instantly. However, with all of them functioning, knowing that they're not allowing themselves not to experience the joy of life.
Wow.
It's because they've come into their truth and they're understanding for themselves individually what's the most important and significant things. And they're adjusting their lives to focus on really what resonates well with them as opposed to things they have no control over. They're focusing on the breath, not on the what if. They're focused in the here, they're focused in the now, because typically, if we focus in the here and now, every need we have is already being met. No matter what's going on in our lives right now, or whatever we think daunting, ominous cloud is over our head, in this moment, we're fine. The lights are on, we're eating well, or whatever, we're breathing, we're doing all of these things. So there is something for us to glean in this moment. So if we can stay focused and present, the joy of life, no matter what our physical condition is the experience we'll have.
So now we get to what practical steps can people take wherever they're at in that spectrum of health, emotional or physical?
Well, number one would be self-acceptance. No matter where you're at in life, whether you're happy or unhappy, is to accept yourself wherever you are. Why is that important? Because that's the foundation about getting to where you want to be. If I can't accept where I am, how will I ever get to where I'm going? If I don't know that I'm in Rhode Island, how can I get to California?
Not a good choice at the moment with the fires, but
once you're gaining self-acceptance, is give yourself permission to be selfish. You know, people think being selfish is a negative thing. I don't know that selfish is a negative word. I think we give it a negative connotation because actually society and religion teaches you to be selfish. They don't teach it that way, but it does. When you're on a plane, they tell you to put an oxygen mask on you first before putting it on your own child. Instinctively, we probably put it on the child first before we put it on ourselves. But if we did that, we would die according to the airline. That can be considered a selfish act. When I work with religious people, I usually grab something, and whatever your religion is, everybody has a book of some kind that has a message. I find a lot of similarities between the varying books. However, even in a Christian book, the disciples were punished when they woke Jesus up in the belly of the ship, and they were disciplined because they woke his sleep was more important than their unrest because of a storm. When they had the fishes and the loaves, the disciples ate while the thousands never ate. That could look like a selfish act because they had been following them for 4 to 3 days without food. You're watching someone else eat while you haven't. Had they not eaten first, they would not have had the strength to pick up the remnant to feed the thousands. So even though something looks selfish, doesn't mean it's negative. When I'm speaking of being selfish, I'm talking about to allowing yourself to be a factor in your own equation of life. Because that facilitates me being in my greatest self. When I'm in my greatest self, now I'm the greatest offering to those that I love and all that I call myself responsible for. So being selfish is a good thing. If I'm a well, I don't want to run dry because if I don't pay attention to being connected to a stream that keeps me full, I won't be able to feed.
And I see that. I was going to say most women or many women do that. They keep on family, but so do the men, because at least in the past, the men was out at work and working so hard, and many of them still are, you know, working 3 jobs and everything, and they are handling the financial part of what happens to their health.
Very, very much so. And giving yourself permission to be selfish. The third would be is not to minimize your own value. One of the things I find with clients and a number of people is not accepting your own value. It's to acknowledge your own self-worth, the contribution to society, the contribution to self, the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding you have. It's very important. If anything that I see most in my office is no matter how successful people are, no matter how fine they're dressed, I'm coming across quite a few people that don't value themselves. They value perception as opposed to truth. So understanding and connecting to your own value. Again, applauding your successes and being grateful for what you currently have. It may not necessarily be all of what you desire, but it's every resource that you need to make the next move to get to what you desire. And for that reason, I should be grateful for what I have. Is that fair?
And absolutely. And another piece I'd add somewhere in there is not to make an effort not to compare yourself.
Oh, but think about this. This is why being well is very unique. It's unique. Why? Because well to you is different than wellness to me. So there really is no comparison. The only one competes against is themselves. And the competition is me making sure that I become my greatest self, not my lesser self.
Great. Okay, so what final words do you have? And also tell us about your man cave conversations. So tell us that and then your final words.
Oh, yes. So, most importantly, one of the things I said, not to forget pace, is that don't be anxious. Be consistent and steady, and be sincere about the course and the direction that you're on. Because with intention, it's inevitable. Impacts are made. It's like taking all of your energy, taking the sun rays and isolating it through a magnifying glass. It will burn a blade of grass, it'll burn an ant, it will burn a piece of paper, because focused attention works no matter where you are, no matter what layer of life you're focused on. It's natural, it's science, it's universal. Focused attention creates impact.
The only problem in that is people probably stop too soon because they have an idea that it's supposed to happen in the next week or the next month.
Correct, but then I would go back and say, I always remind, obviously I have gray hair, so I got a couple of days on me. So I always remind people of Formula 409. It's a cleaning product. And the reason they call it Formula 409 is because they tried it 408 times and it didn't work. The 409th time it actually worked. They took failure and thought it of as a learning lesson to move forward. Now I know what doesn't work. Now I know how to refine my process to attain what the goal is. They never lost sight of the goal. It's how they framed their hiccups, the bumps, the challenges that would allow them to continue to move forward.
That's great. So tell us about your man cave conversations.
You know, again, man cave conversation is just my offering to the world to dispel myths and misnomers and stereotypes. We're all unique creatures. And it's time for men to be free to be able to tell the truth, that we're rough and tough and all of these things, but we also want to be wanted and desired. We want to be effective partners. We want to be healthy. We want to be whole. And this is a forum that creates a safe space for men to share truth, to dispel myth.
That's beautiful. And what form does it take? I know you used to have them in person.
Right. Well, actually, this one we're going to do, I'm talking to the new season. We're kind of doing a Zoom thing, but I enjoy interaction with people, so I have to adjust my mind to the new normal. But we're going to kind of do a Zoom format and kind of open it. Actually, this one may actually include women, because we want to talk about the gender divide and the relational divide based on gender.
Beautiful. So helpful. So do you have any final words before we end?
Well, Erica, I just want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to just be who I am. And again, to help me facilitate being all of who I am by sharing with your public, your audience. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I continue to encourage you to do the wonderful work that you're doing.
Thank you. And it's just beautiful listening to you. And as I said before, we need more men like you putting the word out to other men and to women that there's a whole other way to look at things.
Thank you so much.
We can end the gender divide.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
And to those of you watching, I hope you've enjoyed this interview with Todd Malloy talking about creating your unique brand of being well, being authentically you. Please visit his speaker page for more information and leave a comment on today's post in the Science of Being Well Facebook group. Check your email to continue learning more about the science of being well.